The metallic walls of Hegemon Detention Station Alpha 7 vibrated with the low hum of power currents. They called it the Vault, a fitting name for a place designed to break spirits and extract secrets. Princess Azora of Aquilon had been here for 7 days, though in the perpetual artificial light of the interrogation chamber, time had lost all meaning. Her azure skin, once luminescent and proud, now appeared dull and bruised. Energy shackles bound her wrists and ankles, suspending her in the center of the room. The neural disruptor wrapped around her throat emitted occasional pulses that sent lightning bolts of agony cascading through her nervous system. She refused to scream. Not anymore. They had taken her dignity, her freedom, but they would not take her resolve. Commander Draith circled her like a predator, his reptilian eyes narrowed with growing frustration. His scaled skin shifted from emerald to crimson as his anger mounted. "Your resistance is illogical, Princess," he said, voice modulated to perfect calm, despite his obvious rage. "The Hegemon Collective has already annexed 3 of Aquilon's sister worlds. Your underwater paradise will follow with or without your cooperation." Azora kept her violet eyes fixed on the distant wall. The Hegemon had risen to power in the void, left by the crumbling Stellar Alliance. What had begun as a trading consortium had transformed into a military juggernaut, consuming independent worlds under the guise of protection and economic stability. Aquilon, with its vast liquid mineral resources and strategic position near the galactic arm, was simply their next prize. "Perhaps another session with the disruptor will loosen your tongue," Draith suggested, his claw hovering over the control panel. Fleet Admiral Drace grows impatient. He requires Aquilon's defense codes and the location of your resistance cells. Azora closed her eyes, bracing for the familiar cascade of pain. The neural disruptor was barbaric but effective. It scrambled synaptic pathways, creating a hellscape of the victim's own memories and fears. It left no physical marks, but had driven stronger beings than her to madness. 7 days, Draith continued. "Most break after 3. I'm beginning to think your species has some neurological abnormality we should study further. After we've extracted what we need, of course." The warning klaxon sounded without warning, 3 sharp blasts that made Draith's scales ripple with surprise. The chamber door's status panel flashed from secured green to emergency red. "What?" he began, but his question was cut short by an explosion that ripped the reinforced door from its frame in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Through the smoke and debris stepped a figure Azora had never expected to see in the depths of a Hegemon detention facility, a human. Tall and broad-shouldered with dark hair tied back from a face marked by a jagged scar that ran from temple to jaw. He wore a patchwork of scavenged armor over a faded Stellar Alliance flight suit, and in his hands he carried a modified pulse rifle that hummed with dangerous energy. "Step away from her," the human commanded, his voice low and deadly calm. Draith recovered quickly, his hand moving to the disruptor controls. "Intruder security breach in..." The human fired before Draith could finish. The pulse shot caught the commander in the shoulder, spinning him away from the control panel and sending him crashing into the wall. He slumped to the floor, stunned but alive. With efficient movements, the human crossed to the control panel and deactivated the energy shackles. Azora collapsed her legs, buckling after days suspended in the air. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. "Can you walk?" the human asked, his eyes gray, as starship steel meeting hers. "Yes," she managed, though her voice rasped from days of screaming. "Who are you?" A half-smile crossed his face as he helped her steady herself. "Mads Rowan. Some call me Rogue." "Why are you here?" she asked, scanning the corridor beyond the shattered door. "How did you even find me?" "Questions for later," Mads replied, handing her a small energy pistol from his belt. "Right now, I'm getting you out of this nightmare. Can you shoot?" Azora's fingers closed around the weapon muscle memory from years of royal security training taking over. "Better than you, I'd wager." His grin widened. Good. We'll need it. The station alert's been triggered. We have maybe 3 minutes before this place is swarming with Hegemon security. As if on cue, the station-wide alarm began to wail red emergency lights, bathing the corridor in crimson. Mads grabbed a data tablet from Draith's unconscious form and tucked it into his pack. This way, he said, pointing down the corridor away from the central hub. I've got a ship docked at Maintenance Airlock 6. If we can reach it, we might just survive this. Azora nodded, falling into step beside him. Questions burned in her mind. Who was this human? Why risk everything to save her? What did he want in return? But survival came first. She would have answers later, assuming they lived that long. They moved swiftly through the detention level, the scarlet emergency lighting casting everything in a hellish glow. Mads led with confidence, suggesting he had somehow accessed the station's layout beforehand. At the first junction, they encountered a pair of Hegemon guards rushing toward the detention area. Without hesitation, Azora raised her borrowed pistol and fired twice. The first shot caught the lead guard in the chest, sending him sprawling backward. The second struck the shoulder of his companion, causing him to drop his weapon with a cry of pain. Mads glanced at her with newfound appreciation. Royal marksman training. Every Aquilonian royal learns to protect themselves, she replied, stepping over the incapacitated guards. Especially in times like these. They continued through the labyrinthine corridors, encountering sporadic resistance. Mads fought with the improvisational style of someone who had survived countless skirmishes, using the environment setting traps and conserving ammunition with precise shots. Azora provided cover fire with remarkable accuracy, despite her weakened state. The neural disruptor still clung to her throat, impossible to remove without the proper deactivation sequence. Each sudden movement sent pulses of disorienting pain through her system, but she pushed through it, determined not to become a liability. "Hold," Mads whispered, as they approached a major intersection. He pressed himself against the wall and cautiously peered around the corner. Security checkpoint ahead. 4 guards' automated defense turret mounted on the ceiling. Azora's mind raced through tactical possibilities. "Can we bypass it?" "No," he replied grimly. "It's the only way to the maintenance airlocks." She glanced down at the neural disruptor around her neck, an idea forming. "These devices emit a specific neural frequency, correct?" Mads nodded slowly. "Scrambles brain patterns, nasty tech. And Hegemon security systems are designed to avoid friendly fire," she continued. "Their automated systems shouldn't target their own technology." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You're suggesting we use the disruptor as a shield? That's insane. Do you have a better idea?" After a moment's consideration, he shook his head. "It's risky. If you're wrong..." "I spent 3 cycles studying Hegemon technology before the invasion," she interrupted. "Their systems are sophisticated but predictable. The neural disruptor emits a friendly identifier to prevent cross-disruption from multiple devices." Mads studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Lead the way, princess." Taking a deep breath, Azora stepped into the intersection, the neural disruptor prominently visible around her neck. The automated turret swiveled toward her, its targeting system locking on, then hesitating as it detected the Hegemon technology. The guards reacted more conventionally, raising their weapons and shouting for her to halt. Azora dove to the side as Mads emerged from cover, firing rapidly to take advantage of the momentary confusion. 2 guards fell immediately, while the others scrambled for position. The turret remained inactive, its programming conflicted by the presence of the neural disruptor. Azora fired at the remaining guards, while Mads sprinted forward, sliding beneath the turret's coverage area. He reached the control panel and slammed his fist into the emergency override. The security doors began to close automatically. Azora rolled through the narrowing gap just before they sealed shut, cutting off pursuit from that direction. "Impressive theory," Mads acknowledged, as they continued toward the maintenance section. "Though I wouldn't want to test it again." "Neither would I," she admitted, wincing, as the disruptor sent another shock through her system. This thing is becoming more unstable. The emergency protocols must be affecting it. Concern flashed across his scarred face. Can you make it to the ship? I don't have much choice, do I? She replied, with grim determination. They reached Maintenance Airlock 6, after navigating through service tunnels and avoiding 2 more security patrols. Docked on the other side was the most unlikely escape vessel Azora could have imagined, a battered Stellar Alliance Phantom-class scout ship, its once proud insignia obscured by scorch marks and hasty repairs. That's your ship? She asked incredulously. She's faster than she looks, Mads defended, working quickly to override the airlock controls. And she's gotten me out of worse spots than this. The airlock cycled open with a hydraulic hiss. As they stepped through, a new alarm sounded deeper and more urgent than the security alert. That's the containment breach warning, Azora said, her stomach sinking. They're initiating station lockdown. Then we'd better move quickly, Mads replied, pulling her toward the ship's entry ramp. The Phantom's interior was cramped, but functional, displaying the same pragmatic modifications as its exterior. Mads slid into the pilot's seat with practiced ease, his fingers dancing across the controls as systems came online. Strap in, he instructed, nodding toward the co-pilot's chair. This won't be a standard departure. Azora secured herself as the ship's engines roared to life. External clamps released automatically as Mads bypassed the docking protocols, causing the station's docking alarm to add its wail to the cacophony of alerts. Through the viewport, she could see armored security personnel rushing toward the airlock. Their weapons fire sparked harmlessly against the ship's hull as Mads engaged the thrusters, tearing the Phantom away from the station with enough force to throw Azora back in her seat. They'll deploy interceptors, she warned, scanning the rudimentary tactical display. Already accounted for, Mads replied, hands steady on the controls as he guided the ship into a steep dive, relative to the station's orientation. We're in the Caraxes asteroid belt, perfect terrain for losing pursuers. As if summoned by her warning, the tactical display pinged with new contacts, 6 Hegemon interceptors, launching from the station's hangar bay. Mads increased thrust, sending the Phantom hurtling toward the dense field of asteroids that surrounded them. The ship's frame groaned in protest as he pushed it beyond standard safety parameters. I thought you said this ship was fast, Azora shouted over the straining engines. I said faster than she looks, he corrected with a reckless grin. And she's got a few surprises left. The first of the interceptors came within weapons range, firing a barrage that shook the Phantom despite its shields. Mads responded by executing a series of evasive maneuvers that sent them careening between asteroid fragments, using the natural terrain as additional cover. Azora gripped her seat as the neural disruptor sent waves of nausea through her system with each jarring turn. If they report my escape to Fleet Admiral Drace— They already have, Mads interrupted grimly. But we've got a head start and a destination they don't know about. And where is that exactly? He glanced at her, his expression unreadable. Somewhere safe, somewhere neutral. We need to get that disruptor off you and plan our next move. She questioned, raising an eyebrow despite the pain. I didn't break into a Hegemon detention facility on a whim. Princess, he replied, executing another evasive maneuver that sent an interceptor crashing into an asteroid. We have a common enemy. Azora wanted to press further, but the tactical situation demanded her attention. 2 interceptors coming around that large asteroid at bearing 347. Mads nodded in acknowledgement, diving beneath the asteroid in question before doubling back and firing the Phantom's rear-mounted pulse cannon. The energy burst caught one interceptor, directly turning it into expanding debris. The second veered away momentarily, losing their trail. Can you reach the engineering console? Mads asked, not taking his eyes from the viewport as he navigated through increasingly dense asteroid clusters. Azora unstrapped and moved carefully to the indicated panel, fighting waves of disorientation from the disruptor. What am I looking for? Reactor Sequence Gamma 6, he instructed. It's a modified burst protocol I installed. Not exactly Alliance standard. She found the sequence and activated it, causing the engine pitch to change dramatically. The ship's power signature fluctuated, then seemed to splinter into multiple ghost readings on the tactical display. Sensor confusion package, Mads explained with obvious pride. Should buy us enough time to clear the asteroid field and make our jump to hyperspace. Impressive, Azora admitted, returning to her seat. Alliance technology with smuggler modifications? Let's just say my departure from Alliance service wasn't entirely voluntary, he replied, with a cryptic smile. But their loss is your gain today. The remaining interceptors fell for the deception, splitting up to chase Phantom signatures, while the actual Phantom slipped through the densest part of the asteroid field and emerged on the far side. With a final burst from the straining engines, they cleared the gravity well and made the jump to hyperspace, the stars stretching into luminous streaks around them. As the immediate danger passed, Azora felt the accumulated exhaustion of her ordeal catching up with her. The adrenaline that had kept her going began to fade, making her acutely aware of every bruise and the constant pain from the neural disruptor. Mads noticed her condition and set the autopilot. We've got about 6 hours until we reach the Vidian outpost. You should rest. First, she said firmly, despite her fatigue, I want answers. Who are you really? Why risk everything to rescue me? He sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. The simple version: I'm Mads Rowan, former Alliance pilot, now independent operator. As for why, he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. The Hegemon Collective needs to be stopped. Aquilon is just their latest target, but not their last. You're a symbol of resistance, Princess. With you captured, many believed the fight was over. And with me free, hope returns, he said simply. And hope is what we need to build a coalition strong enough to challenge the Hegemon. Azora studied him, searching for deception, but finding only determination in his weathered features. You speak of we. Who else is involved in this resistance? You'll meet some of them at Vidian, he replied. Former Alliance officials, independent world representatives, even some corporate interests threatened by Hegemon expansion. But first, he reached into a compartment beneath the pilot's console and removed a medical kit. Let's see what we can do about making you more comfortable. He selected a hypo-injector and held it up for her inspection. Neurostabilizer. It won't remove the disruptor, but it should counteract the worst effects until we can get it properly deactivated. Azora nodded her consent, and he gently pressed the injector against her neck, just above the cruel device. Almost immediately, the chaotic neural pulses subsided to a dull, manageable ache. Thank you, she said softly, the relief evident in her voice. Get some rest, he urged again. There's a bunk in the rear compartment. I'll wake you when we arrive. This time, she didn't argue, making her way to the small sleeping area. Despite her lingering questions and concerns, exhaustion claimed her almost as soon as she lay down on the narrow bunk. Her dreams were fragmented echoes of the neural disruptor's effects, underwater cities burning her people, scattered and hunted the cold eyes of Fleet Admiral Drace as he announced the annexation of Aquilon. She woke with a start several hours later, momentarily disoriented, until the events of her rescue came flooding back. The ship had changed from the violent shaking of evasive maneuvers to a gentle, steady hum that suggested they were traveling normally through hyperspace. Rising from the bunk, she made her way back to the cockpit where Mads sat monitoring the ship's systems. Perfect timing, he said, without turning around. We're approaching Vidian outpost. Should be dropping out of hyperspace in about 10 minutes. Azora took the co-pilot seat, feeling remarkably better after the rest and neurostabilizer. Tell me about this outpost. Officially, it's an independent trading post in unclaimed space, Mads explained. In reality, it's a haven for anyone looking to stay off the grid: smugglers, political refugees, mercenaries. The station administrator, Thorne, maintains strict neutrality. No Hegemon, no Alliance remnants, no corporate security allowed to operate openly. And yet you have allies there. I have contacts, he corrected. One in particular who can help with that disruptor. Cyrus used to work Alliance intelligence before the collapse. He knows more about Hegemon tech than anyone outside their collective. The ship dropped out of hyperspace with a slight shudder, revealing their destination through the viewport. Vidian Outpost hung in space, like a massive mechanical spider, its central hub connected to 8 extending arms of varying sizes. Unlike the sleek designs of Alliance stations, or the imposing uniform architecture of Hegemon facilities, Vidian was a patchwork construction built and rebuilt over decades, each section telling a different story of its evolving purpose. "Charming," Azora commented dryly. Mads chuckled. "It's not pretty, but it's one of the few truly free ports left in this sector. Thorn runs a tight operation despite appearances." As they approached the comm system, activated with an automated docking request, Mads responded with a series of codes that appeared to satisfy the station's security protocols, and they were directed to a berth on the station's third arm. "Keep your head down and stay close," Mads advised as they prepared to disembark. "Your species isn't common here, but we can't assume the Hegemon don't have informants watching for you." From a storage locker, he retrieved a hooded cloak that would conceal her distinctive azure skin and royal bearing. Azora wrapped it around herself carefully, arranging the hood to hide the neural disruptor, still attached to her neck. The docking process completed with a series of mechanical clanks, and the Phantom's exit ramp extended to meet the station's airlock. Mads performed a final weapons check, concealing several smaller devices within his patchwork armor, before nodding to Azora. "Ready!" She took a deep breath and straightened her posture, royal dignity reasserting itself despite her ordeal. "Lead on, Rogue." Vidian Outpost's interior matched its exterior, a chaotic blend of different architectural styles, lighting systems, and atmospheric conditions. The main concourse of the third arm housed an eclectic marketplace where dozens of species bartered, argued, and conducted business beneath a canopy of mismatched lighting panels. Mads guided Azora through the crowd with the practiced ease of someone familiar with navigating such environments. He kept one hand near his concealed weapon and the other occasionally touching her elbow to direct her through particularly dense clusters of market-goers. They passed stalls, selling everything from exotic foodstuffs to spaceship parts of questionable origin. Merchants called out in various languages, while security drones occasionally drifted overhead, their sensor arrays sweeping the crowd for prohibited weapons or activities. "Thorn's office is in the central hub," Mads explained in a low voice. "We'll need his clearance to access the secure levels where Cyrus operates. But first, I need to make contact with an informant." He led her to a small establishment nestled between a parts dealer and a synthetic nutrient dispensary. The sign above the door displayed a universal translator icon alongside what appeared to be a stylized communications array. Inside, the lighting was dim and blue-tinted, creating pools of shadow between the scattered tables. Few patrons occupied the space, most hunched over personal data terminals or engaged in hushed conversations. At the bar, a multi-limbed being with translucent skin polished glassware with methodical precision. Mads approached directly Azora close behind. "I'm looking for Lannis," he stated without preamble. The bartender's outer membrane rippled in what might have been recognition. One limb gestured toward a booth in the farthest corner, where a hooded figure sat alone, face illuminated by the glow of a datapad. As they approached, the figure looked up, revealing the delicate features of a Tyrusian humanoid with pale, almost luminescent skin and eyes that shifted color according to mood. Currently, those eyes gleamed a cautious amber. "Mads Rowan," the Tyrusian, greeted, voice melodic despite the clear tension. "Successful hunt, I see." "Lannis," Mads acknowledged with a nod. "We need to speak with Thorn." Lannis's eyes flickered to Azora, then to the barely visible edge of the neural disruptor beneath her hood. "Dangerous cargo you're carrying. The bounty on her has tripled in the last 6 hours." Azora tensed, but Mads remained calm. "Thorn's policy is neutrality. We're paying customers seeking services, nothing more." "True." Lannis conceded, eyes shifting to a more neutral blue. But Hegemon agents have been unusually active on the station since this morning. Thorne has increased security in response, which makes accessing him more complicated. We don't need complicated, Mads pressed. We need direct. The princess requires immediate medical attention. Lannis studied them both for a long moment before sighing a sound like wind through crystal. Maintenance shaft 42B will take you to the central hub without passing the main security checkpoints. I can provide access codes for the usual fee. Mads placed a small data chip on the table. Triple your usual rate if the codes work. Quadruple if you keep our presence quiet for the next 12 hours. The Tyrusian's eyes shifted to an interested violet as one slender hand palmed the chip. Done. Transmitting codes now. Lannis tapped several commands into the datapad, and Mads's personal device chimed with the received information. Pleasure doing business, Lannis added eyes, now a satisfied green. Word of advice, Thorne has a new security chief. Very thorough, very loyal. Be prepared to offer significant incentives. Noted, Mads replied. We'll be on our way. They left the establishment as casually as they had entered, though Azora could feel the Tyrusian's color-shifting gaze following them until they disappeared back into the market crowd. Can they be trusted? She asked, once they were out of earshot. Duh. Lannis. As much as anyone can be trusted when credits are involved, Mads replied pragmatically. The information will be good. Whether it stays exclusive depends on who offers a better price later. Then we should hurry. Following Lannis's directions, they located Maintenance Shaft 42B behind a service panel in a less trafficked corridor. The access codes worked as promised, revealing a narrow utility tunnel bathed in emergency lighting. Not exactly the royal procession you're accustomed to, Mads commented as they began their climb through the station's infrastructure. I've crawled through worse during resistance operations, Azora replied, surprising him. The crown doesn't exempt me from getting my hands dirty when freedom is at stake. They navigated through a labyrinth of maintenance passages, occasionally pausing to let service drones pass or to avoid security sensors. The neural disruptor continued to cause Azora discomfort, despite the stabilizer, and Mads noticed her increasingly labored breathing. We're almost there, he assured her, genuine concern evident in his voice. Cyrus can help with the disruptor. The passage eventually opened into a utility room on the lowest level of the central hub. From there, they used service corridors to approach Thorne's office from an unexpected direction, avoiding the heavily guarded main entrance. Outside, a nondescript door marked only with a maintenance code, Mads paused and activated his comm device. Cyrus, it's Rogue. We've arrived with a package. Need immediate assistance at your back door. A moment of silence followed before the comm crackled to life. Verification sequence. Stellar falls, darkness rises. Phantom lights the way, Mads recited. Confirmed, came the reply, and the door slid open to reveal a narrow corridor beyond. They stepped through into what appeared to be a highly specialized medical facility, hidden behind the facade of a maintenance area. Advanced equipment lined the walls, much of it modified or custom-built rather than standard production models. A lean, silver-haired human emerged from an adjoining room, bright blue eyes, sharp with intelligence, in a face lined by age and experience. Despite his obvious years, he moved with the precise efficiency of someone much younger. Princess Azora, he greeted with a respectful inclination of his head. Dr. Cyrus Valen, formerly of Alliance Intelligence. Let's get that abomination off your neck. Azora lowered her hood, revealing the full extent of the neural disruptor. Cyrus approached, producing a scanning device from his pocket and carefully examining the device without touching it. Hegemon, neural disruptor, Mark 7. He muttered, his expression darkening. Barbaric technology. The fact that you're still coherent after prolonged exposure speaks volumes about your resilience, Your Highness. Can you remove it? Mads asked, watching the doctor work. Yes, but it won't be pleasant, Cyrus replied grimly. They've integrated fail-safes specifically designed to punish escape attempts. If deactivated improperly, it will deliver a final, potentially lethal neural surge. Azora met his gaze steadily. Do what you must, Doctor. I've endured their torture for 7 days. I can endure a few more moments to be free of it. Cyrus nodded, his respect visibly increasing. Please sit here. He indicated a specialized medical chair, equipped with various monitoring devices. As Azora took her place, Cyrus began calibrating his equipment. Mads, you should speak with Thorn. He's expecting you, and time is of the essence. Mads hesitated, glancing at Azora. Will you be all right here? I'm hardly in a position to go anywhere else, she replied with grim humor. Go. We'll need Thorn's cooperation for whatever comes next. With a final nod, Mads departed through another door, leaving Azora in Cyrus's capable hands. The doctor worked methodically, first attaching monitoring sensors to track her neural activity, then carefully examining the disruptor from all angles. The hegemon have refined this technology over decades, he explained as he worked seemingly to distract her from the procedure. What began as a medical device for treating neural disorders became a weapon of control and torture. I spent years studying captured specimens, trying to develop countermeasures for Alliance personnel. Did you succeed? Azora asked, remaining perfectly still despite her discomfort. Partially, Cyrus admitted. Enough to develop this procedure, at least. The disruptor creates artificial synaptic pathways that override normal brain function. I need to sever those connections before deactivating the device itself. He selected a precision tool that emitted a faint blue glow. This will be unpleasant but brief. The neurostabilizer Mads administered will help, but cannot eliminate all sensation. Azora nodded her understanding and closed her eyes, bracing herself. The procedure that followed pushed the boundaries of her endurance. As Cyrus methodically severed the artificial neural connections, each disrupted pathway triggered cascading sensory responses, phantom pains, momentary blindness, flashes of remembered tortures. She gripped the chair's armrests with white-knuckled intensity, but remained silent throughout. After what seemed an eternity, Cyrus spoke again. Almost done. The final step requires precise timing. When I deactivate the primary control node, the device will attempt one last neural assault. I'll need to remove it completely within a 3-second window. I understand, Azora managed, her voice strained but determined. On my count, 3, 2, 1. A blinding wave of pain crashed through her consciousness as the disruptor made its final attack. Azora felt herself slipping toward oblivion, fighting to remain conscious as Cyrus worked with incredible precision. Then suddenly, the pain vanished, replaced by an almost overwhelming sense of relief as the neural disruptor came free. Cyrus deposited the device in a shielded container, his expression satisfied. Excellently endured, Your Highness. Your neural patterns should return to normal within a few days, though some residual effects may persist longer. Azora raised a trembling hand to her throat, feeling the tender skin where the device had been attached. Thank you, Dr. Valen. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. Rest here for a moment. I should check on Mads and Thorn. Their negotiation may require a medical perspective on your condition. Left alone, briefly, Azora took stock of her situation. The constant neural interference that had clouded her thoughts for 7 days was gone, allowing her mind to function clearly for the first time since her capture. With clarity came purpose and questions about her unexpected rescuer. Mads Rowan was clearly more than the rogue pilot he claimed to be. His knowledge of hegemon facilities, his contacts throughout the sector, his mention of building a coalition against the collective, all suggested operations on a scale beyond one man's vendetta. Yet, something in his manner rang true, a genuine commitment to the cause that couldn't be fabricated. The door opened, interrupting her thoughts, as Mads returned with Cyrus and a new figure, a statuesque woman with dark skin, adorned with geometric silver tattoos that marked her as Kaldorian, a species known for their business acumen and political neutrality. Princess Azora, the woman greeted with a formal half-bow. I am Administrator Thorn. My station is honored by your presence, though I wish the circumstances were less dire. Administrator Azora acknowledged, rising from the medical chair with as much dignity as she could muster. I understand you're taking considerable risk by harboring me. Thorne's expression remained professionally neutral. Vidian Outpost maintains absolute neutrality. However, neutrality doesn't preclude humanitarian assistance or private business arrangements, which we've negotiated, Mads added, stepping forward. Thorne has agreed to provide secure accommodations and limited resources while we plan our next move. In exchange for, Azora prompted, well-versed in the realities of political negotiations. Technical expertise, Thorne replied evenly. Dr. Valen has agreed to upgrade our medical facilities, and you, Princess, possess unique knowledge of Aquilonian liquid computing that would significantly enhance our station's efficiency. Azora considered this. The technology in question wasn't classified or militarily significant, merely specialized knowledge that few off-worlders possessed. A fair exchange. I accept your terms, Administrator. Excellent, Thorne said with a satisfied nod. Now, I suggest we move to more secure quarters. Hegemon presence in the Outer Arms has increased in the past hour, and while my security team is vigilant, discretion remains advisable. They followed Thorne through a series of private corridors, accessible only with administrator-level clearance, eventually arriving at a comfortable suite deep within the central hub. The rooms were well appointed by outpost standards, with separate sleeping quarters, a common area, and even a small hydroponic section containing plants from various worlds, including Azora, noted with surprise, a specimen of Aquilonian coral that hummed faintly with bioluminescence. A reminder of home, Thorne explained, noting Azora's attention to the coral. Every visitor to my station receives such a courtesy. You'll find private communications equipment in the main room, secure against external monitoring. My personal guards will ensure your privacy. With that, the administrator departed, leaving Azora with Mads and Cyrus. She seems efficient, Azora commented once the door had closed. Thorne built this station from a derelict mining outpost into the most respected neutral port in 3 sectors. Cyrus explained, moving to examine the communications equipment. Her neutrality is legendary, but so is her pragmatism. If harboring us becomes too costly, she'll find a diplomatic solution that preserves her reputation while minimizing her losses. Then we should work quickly, Mads said, activating the central display console. Cyrus, what's the status of your alliance contacts? The doctor's fingers flew across the interface, bringing up encrypted communication channels. Admiral Korik maintains a flotilla of 6 capital ships and supporting vessels in the Varan Nebula. After the alliance fragmented, he established an independent command offering protection to worlds unwilling to join the corporate consortiums or submit to hegemon protection. 6 capital ships isn't enough to challenge the hegemon directly, Azora observed, studying the tactical display. No, Mads agreed, but combined with your resistance forces and other independent elements, it could be enough to strike a decisive blow against their command structure. Azora looked at him sharply. What exactly are you proposing? Mads met her gaze directly. The hegemon operate on a hierarchical control system. Fleet Admiral Drace commands from the Dreadnought Dominion, which serves as both flagship and central processing hub. All major operations, including the occupation of Aquilon, are coordinated through its systems. You want to attack the Dominion, Azora stated quickly, grasping his intent. A decapitation strike. Not just attack, Cyrus interjected, his expression grave. Infiltrate. I've spent years developing a virus program specifically designed to disrupt hegemon command protocols. If uploaded directly into the Dominion's central core, it could paralyze their entire fleet long enough for Korik's forces to strike. And where exactly is this dreadnought? Azora asked. Mads accessed the latest intelligence reports, bringing up a navigational chart. Currently in orbit around Aquilon, overseeing the final stages of the occupation. Drace is consolidating his victory and hunting for you. Azora studied the display, her tactical mind, analyzing possibilities. Infiltrating a hegemon dreadnought at the height of alert status during an active occupation? It's suicide. Not necessarily, Mads countered. With your knowledge of Aquilonian defenses and my familiarity with hegemon protocols, we could approach under the guise of a captured resistance vessel. Once aboard, we'd have a narrow window to reach the central core and upload Cyrus's virus. And Admiral Korik would coordinate his attack to coincide with the virus activation, Cyrus added, creating maximum confusion during the fleet's most vulnerable moment. Azora paced the room, considering the audacious plan. Even if we succeed, what prevents the hegemon from returning once they recover? Aquilon would still be vulnerable. That's where the broader coalition comes in, Mads explained. While we've been focused on your rescue, other agents have been gathering support from independent worlds, corporate interests opposed to hegemon expansion, and former alliance territories. With the collective's command structure temporarily disabled and their flagship vulnerable, many would seize the opportunity to reclaim their autonomy. A cascading rebellion, Azora murmured, seeing the potential. But it all hinges on successfully infiltrating the most heavily guarded vessel in the hegemon fleet. Cyrus activated a secondary display showing detailed schematics of the Dominion's layout. These plans were obtained at great cost by Alliance intelligence before the collapse. They're not complete, but they provide the critical pathways we'd need to navigate. Azora studied the schematics with growing interest. The central core is accessible via maintenance conduits here and here, she noted, indicating points on the display. Standard security protocols would focus on the main corridors. Exactly, Mads confirmed. And with the right disguises and credentials, which I can provide, Cyrus interjected. We could move relatively freely once aboard, Mads finished. It's high risk, but the potential reward. Freedom for Aquilon. A crippling blow to hegemon expansion. Azora completed the thought. She looked up from the display, her violet eyes reflecting new determination. When do we begin? Over the next 36 hours, they worked tirelessly to refine the plan. Cyrus maintained communication with Admiral Korik, coordinating the fleet's movements to position them for a strike against the Dominion at the critical moment. Mads and Azora focused on the infiltration strategy, studying hegemon protocols, and practicing with the disguises Thorne's contacts had procured. The hegemon naval officer uniforms were uncomfortably rigid, designed for the reptilian physiology of the species. For Azora, additional modifications were required: a dermal pigmentation treatment that temporarily shifted her azure skin to the lavender hue of a subservient species, often employed in hegemon administration. The coloration should last approximately 72 hours, Cyrus explained, as he applied the final treatment. After that, it will gradually fade back to your natural tone. Azora examined her transformed appearance in a reflective panel. The change was dramatic between the altered skin tone, the severe hegemon uniform, and the vocal modulator that would adjust her speech patterns. She appeared entirely different from the Aquilonian royal the hegemon were hunting. Will it be enough? She questioned, testing the vocal modulator. Combined with these, Mads replied, producing a set of identification chips. It should be. Cyrus modified actual hegemon credentials recovered from various operations. According to these, your administrator Vex, a logistics officer transferred from the outer territories to assist with the Aquilon occupation.
And you?
Security specialist Kral, assigned to oversee sensitive technical installations. He demonstrated his own vocal modulator, which added the distinctive harmonic undertone of hegemon speech. Cyrus approached with a final component, a data crystal containing the virus program. This must be inserted directly into the Command Core's primary input node. Secondary access points won't have the necessary permissions to override the security protocols. How long after insertion until the virus takes effect? Azora asked, carefully securing the crystal in a hidden compartment of her uniform. Approximately 6 minutes for full system compromise, Cyrus replied. You'll need to be well clear of the core by then. Once the disruption begins, All automated systems, including security doors and life support, will cycle through random protocols. Which is why timing is essential, Mads added. Admiral Korik's fleet will emerge from hyperspace exactly 20 minutes after our scheduled docking with the Dominion. By then, we need to have uploaded the virus and be positioned to extract key Aquilonian prisoners from the detention level. Azora nodded mentally, reviewing each step of the plan. And our extraction? The Phantom will be docked in a maintenance bay programmed for automated launch on my signal. If all goes according to plan, we'll rendezvous with Korik's flagship once the initial assault creates sufficient confusion. And if all doesn't go according to plan, she pressed. Mats's expression turned grim. Then we improvise. But failure isn't an option not just for us, but for every world threatened by hegemon expansion. Their planning session was interrupted by a priority alert from Thorn, delivered via the secure communication system. The administrator's holographic image appeared above the console, her expression tense despite her usual composure. Hegemon patrol vessels have entered Vidian space, she reported without preamble. They're demanding docking permission for a routine inspection of the station. How long can you delay them? Mads asked immediately, shifting to crisis management. 12 hours at most, Thorn replied. I've initiated standard quarantine protocols citing a containment issue in the outer arms, but they're being unusually persistent. I suspect they have intelligence suggesting the princess is here. Then we need to accelerate our timeline, Azora decided. How soon can the Phantom be ready for departure? 4 hours, Mads answered, after a brief calculation. Cyrus needs to finish the final calibration of the credentials, and I need to upload the navigational data for our approach to Aquilon. Make it 3. Azora directed her royal authority evident, despite her altered appearance. Administrator Thorn, can you ensure our departure remains undetected when the time comes? Thorn nodded. I'll arrange a station-wide power fluctuation to mask your engine signature. The maintenance bay's external sensors will show a routine garbage disposal launch rather than a ship departure. Thank you, Azora acknowledged. Your assistance won't be forgotten when Aquilon is free again. I'm not doing this for future consideration, Princess, Thorn replied, with unexpected candor. The hegemon represent a fundamental threat to independent operations throughout the sector. Their version of order leaves no room for neutral entities like Vidian. My assistance is entirely self-interested. Azora smiled slightly. The best alliances often are. We'll be ready to depart in 3 hours. As Thorn's hologram disappeared, they redoubled their preparations. Cyrus worked feverishly to complete the credential programming, while Mads and Azora finalized the infiltration route through the Dominion's labyrinthine interior. The 3-hour deadline approached with mounting tension. Cyrus completed the credentials with minutes to spare his hands steady, despite the pressure. Mads performed final checks on the Phantom systems, ensuring the ship would respond instantly when needed. As they prepared to depart, Cyrus handed each of them a small device. Emergency communicators shielded against hegemon detection. If you're separated during the operation, these will allow you to coordinate. The range is limited to approximately 1 kilometer, but they'll function even during the system disruption. You're not coming with us, Azora asked, noting the doctor's use of you rather than we. Cyrus shook his head. My role is to coordinate with Admiral Korik and ensure the fleet arrives precisely on schedule. Besides, he added with a wry smile, my infiltration days are long behind me. They made their way to the maintenance bay, where the Phantom waited, moving through the station via service corridors to avoid detection. True to her word, Thorn had arranged for minimal personnel presence along their route. As they reached the ship, Cyrus clasped Mads's arm in a warrior's farewell. The Alliance may be fractured, but its spirit lives on in operations like this. Good hunting, rogue. To Azora, he offered a formal bow. Your Highness, it has been an honor. When you succeed, remember that rebuilding will be as challenging as revolution. The worlds will need leadership that understands both. Thank you, Dr. Valen, she replied sincerely. Your contribution to Aquilon's freedom won't be forgotten. With final farewells exchanged, Mads and Azora boarded the Phantom. The ship powered up with a subdued hum systems, operating at minimal output to avoid detection. As promised, a station-wide power fluctuation masked their departure signatures as the maintenance bay opened to the void of space. The Phantom slipped away from Vidian Outpost like a shadow, immediately engaging stealth protocols that Mads had installed during his years operating beyond Alliance jurisdiction. Once clear of the station's sensor range, they plotted a course for Aquilon, timing their arrival to coincide with a shift change in the Dominion's docking schedule. "Time to hyperspace jump," Azora asked, settling into the co-pilot's chair with growing familiarity. 14 minutes, Mads replied, making final adjustments to their approach vector. "Once we enter hyperspace, we'll have approximately 8 hours to finalize preparations." Azora nodded, her expression thoughtful, as she gazed at the distant stars. "Strange to think that we're potentially deciding the fate of multiple worlds with this operation." Having second thoughts, Mads glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "No," she said firmly. "But I am contemplating the responsibility. If we succeed, many will look to Aquilon for leadership in whatever coalition emerges from the chaos. My people have traditionally been isolationists, our underwater cities designed to be self-sufficient and separate from surface-dwelling species. Perhaps it's time for that tradition to evolve," Mads suggested. "The old alliance failed partly because it never fully integrated the diverse needs and perspectives of its member worlds. Whatever replaces it will need to be more adaptable, more inclusive." "Is that what you envision a new alliance?" He considered the question carefully before answering. "I envision a framework where worlds can cooperate without surrendering their sovereignty. Not an alliance exactly, but a coalition of equals with shared defensive and economic interests." "A noble vision," Azora acknowledged, "but one that will face significant challenges from corporate interests and remnants of the hegemon hierarchy." "Which is why this strike must succeed," Mads concluded. "Not just for Aquilon's freedom, but to create the opportunity for something better to emerge from the current chaos." The navigation system chimed, indicating readiness for the hyperspace jump. With practiced precision, Mads engaged the drive, and the stars stretched into luminous streaks as the Phantom accelerated beyond conventional physics. The 8-hour journey passed in alternating periods of intense preparation and necessary rest. They memorized their cover identities, rehearsed hegemon protocols, and studied the Dreadnought's layout until they could navigate its corridors blindfolded. When exhaustion threatened their focus, they took turns sleeping, neither fully relaxing, but gathering enough strength for the challenges ahead. As they neared Aquilon, the hyperspace alarm sounded warning of their imminent return to normal space. Mads activated the final disguise protocols, ensuring their communication frequencies matched expected hegemon patterns. "Ready?" he asked, hand poised over the hyperspace disengagement control. Azora nodded, fully embodying her role as Administrator Vex. "Proceed, Specialist Kral." The Phantom emerged from hyperspace at the calculated coordinates, immediately transmitting the forged credentials as they approached the massive form of the Dominion. The Dreadnought dwarfed all surrounding vessels, its kilometer-long hull bristling with weapons emplacements and communication arrays. Azora felt a momentary surge of apprehension at the sheer scale of the flagship they intended to infiltrate, but pushed it aside, focusing on the task ahead. "Incoming transmission," Mads noted as the communications panel activated. A harsh hegemon voice demanded identification and purpose. Mads responded in character, his modified voice perfectly mimicking the distinctive cadence of hegemon speech as he cited their cover story, a security inspection of key systems following Princess Azora's escape. Tense seconds passed as the credentials were verified. Finally, the docking controller responded with coordinates for their assigned bay, deep within the Dreadnought's maintenance sector, exactly as they had hoped. "Credentials accepted," Mads confirmed quietly, as he guided the Phantom toward the designated bay. "Docking in 3 minutes. Remember minimal interaction with other personnel," Azora reminded him, adjusting her uniform one final time. Direct, purposeful movement consistent with our assigned roles. The Phantom slipped into the cavernous docking bay, settling onto the designated platform with precision. Through the viewport, they could see Hegemon maintenance crews and security personnel going about their duties, paying little attention to the arrival of yet another shuttle. Docking complete. Mads announced powering down non-essential systems. Setting automated launch protocols for emergency extraction. Recognition code is Phantom Light. Azora nodded, committing the code to memory. Let's proceed. They disembarked with the confident bearing of officers accustomed to their authority. Mads presented their credentials to the base security officer, who performed a cursory check before waving them through with the disinterested efficiency of routine. Once inside the main corridor, they proceeded according to their memorized route, maintaining a purposeful pace that discouraged interaction. When they encountered other Hegemon personnel, they exchanged brief formal acknowledgments consistent with the hierarchy-conscious culture. Their first objective was to reach Auxiliary Control Node 7, which provided a security-free access point to the maintenance conduits leading to the central core. The node was located 3 levels up and 2 sectors forward from their entry point, a journey that required navigating the Dreadnought's busy, central thoroughfares without arousing suspicion. They entered a transport lift along with several other Hegemon officers standing in silence as the car ascended through the massive vessel. Azora maintained perfect composure, despite the proximity to enemies who would kill her instantly if they discovered her true identity. Exiting at the designated level, they continued through a series of checkpoints, each one increasing the tension as their credentials were scanned and verified. The Hegemon security systems were operating at heightened alert following Azora's escape, but Cyrus's meticulous forgeries held up to scrutiny. They reached Auxiliary Control Node 7 without incident, finding it temporarily unoccupied, as predicted by their intelligence. Mads secured the door, while Azora accessed the maintenance conduit entrance, concealed behind a panel of monitoring equipment. "We have approximately 20 minutes before the next scheduled inspection," Mads noted, checking the time. Azora nodded, removing the panel to reveal the narrow access tunnel beyond. "More than enough time to reach the core if we maintain pace." They entered the conduit, replacing the panel behind them to conceal their passage. The maintenance tunnels were cramped and dimly lit, designed for access rather than comfort. They crawled through in silence, counting junctions and access points to navigate the labyrinthine network. After 10 minutes of careful progress, they reached the central core access point, a sealed hatch marked with Hegemon warning symbols. "Security override sequence," Mads whispered, producing a specialized decryption device Cyrus had provided. The device interfaced with the hatch's control panel, cycling through potential security codes at a speed no organic being could match. After 30 seconds of processing, the hatch's indicators shifted from secured red to authorized green, and it slid open silently. Beyond lay the Dominion's central core, a vast chamber housing the quantum computing arrays that coordinated all operations across the Hegemon fleet. The space pulsed with blue-green light, emanating from crystal processing matrices suspended in gravity-neutral fields. "Primary input node is located on the upper gantry," Azora whispered, pointing to a control station overlooking the core arrays. They moved cautiously around the chamber's perimeter, avoiding the automated maintenance drones that hovered among the processing crystals. The chamber was designed for minimal organic presence, with most functions automated to prevent interference with the delicate quantum states. Reaching the gantry access ladder, they ascended to the control station. Azora produced the data crystal containing Cyrus's virus, while Mads monitored the chamber's security systems for any sign of detection. "Ready," she confirmed, positioning the crystal near the input slot. Mads checked the time. 12 minutes until Admiral Korik's estimated arrival. Insert when ready." With steady hands, Azora inserted the crystal into the primary input node. The system automatically began processing the new data, unaware of its destructive nature. Status indicators flickered as the virus established itself within the quantum matrices, spreading through subsystems like digital wildfire. Upload initiated, Azora confirmed. Estimated completion in 6 minutes. Time to move, Mads urged. We need to reach the detention level before the systems begin failing. They descended from the gantry and retraced their path to the maintenance conduit, securing the hatch behind them to delay discovery of their intrusion. Moving with increased urgency, they navigated back through the narrow tunnels toward their secondary objective, the high-security detention area, where key Aquilonian resistance leaders were being held. As they emerged from the conduits near the detention level, the first signs of the virus's effects became apparent. Lighting systems flickered inconsistently, and nearby communication panels emitted bursts of static. Security doors cycled through random lock-unlock sequences as the central control systems lost coherence. "It's starting," Azora observed as they hurried through an oddly deserted corridor. "Where is everyone?" "Likely responding to system failures throughout the ship," Mads suggested. "Perfect cover for us to reach the detention area." They rounded a corner and encountered a squad of Hegemon security personnel rushing in the opposite direction. The officer in charge barely glanced at them, assuming they were part of the response to the growing crisis. The detention-level entrance loomed ahead, its security systems already compromised by the spreading virus. The massive doors stood partially open, caught in a system reset loop that prevented them from either fully closing or opening. Mads and Azora slipped through the gap, finding the detention control center in chaos. The few guards present were frantically trying to restore systems, paying little attention to new arrivals. "Prisoner manifest," Mads demanded in his best authoritative Hegemon voice, approaching the chief security officer. The officer looked up distractedly. "Systems are down across the board. We can't access—" "Manual records," Mads interrupted impatiently. "Now." Intimidated by the apparent authority, the officer produced a datapad containing offline records of the detention level's occupants. Azora studied it quickly, identifying the locations of the resistance leaders. Cells 12 through 17 high-security wing. They moved deeper into the detention area, using the growing confusion to their advantage. The high-security wing was accessed through another set of malfunctioning doors, which they forced open manually with effort. Inside, they found 6 cells containing the leaders of Aquilon's resistance scientists, military strategists, and political figures who had opposed Hegemon occupation. Many showed signs of the same neural disruptor torture Azora had endured. "Princess," one of the prisoners asked incredulously, as Azora deactivated the cell force fields using emergency override codes. "There's no time to explain," she replied urgently, reverting to her natural voice. "The Hegemon command systems are compromised and Alliance forces will arrive any moment. We need to move quickly." The freed prisoners, despite their weakened condition, understood the urgency. Those stronger helped those more severely affected by the neural disruptors as the group moved toward the detention-level exit. Their progress was interrupted by a ship-wide announcement that cut through the chaotic communications. "All personnel, this is Fleet Admiral Drace. We are experiencing a coordinated cyber attack. Implement security protocol Omega-9 immediately. All section commanders report to The announcement dissolved into static as another wave of system failures cascaded through the dreadnought. "That's our cue," Mads noted grimly. "Korik's fleet should be arriving any—" The ship shuddered violently as the first wave of Alliance weapons fire struck its outer defenses. Alarm klaxons wailed, adding to the confusion as emergency protocols activated automatically. To the maintenance bay, Azora directed the group. "We have transport waiting." They navigated through increasingly chaotic corridors, where crew members rushed to battle stations or attempted to address critical system failures. The virus had done its work perfectly, leaving the massive dreadnought vulnerable, just as Admiral Korik's fleet emerged from hyperspace. Through viewport windows, they caught glimpses of the space battle unfolding beyond the Dominion's hull. Alliance vessels engaged Hegemon ships whose coordination had been shattered by the command system failure. Fighters darted between capital ships, exploiting the confusion to strike critical systems. As they approached the maintenance bay, where the Phantom waited, a security detail rounded the corner ahead, led by a figure Azora recognized instantly, Commander Draith. His scales flushed deep crimson with rage. "You," he snarled, recognizing her despite the disguise. "Impossible." Mads reacted instantly, pushing Azora and the nearest prisoners behind a structural column as Draith's squad opened fire. Energy bolts scorched the corridor walls, filling the air with the acrid smell of superheated metal. "Get to the ship," Mads ordered, drawing his concealed weapon and returning fire. "Activation code Phantom Light. I'll hold them here." "Not without you," Azora countered, taking position beside him with her own weapon. The firefight intensified as both sides sought advantage. The freed prisoners, though unarmed, contributed by creating diversions, overloading nearby power conduits to create smoke screens, or activating emergency systems to confuse the security team. Draith coordinated his forces with the skill of a veteran commander, but the continuing system failures hindered his efforts. Communication devices failed unpredictably, and automated security measures activated at random, sometimes targeting his own personnel. A lucky shot from Mads caught one of the security officers in the chest, creating a momentary opening. "Now," he shouted, laying down covering fire, as Azora led the prisoners toward the maintenance bay entrance. They reached the bay doors, just as another violent shudder ran through the ship, the result of a direct hit to a nearby section. Emergency barriers began dropping throughout the area as automated damage control systems activated. "Hurry," Azora urged, helping the last of the prisoners through the doorway before turning back for Mads. He was engaged in close combat with Draith, having run out of energy charges for his weapon. The Hegemon commander's natural strength gave him an advantage, but Mads fought with the desperate intensity of someone with everything to lose. Azora aimed carefully and fired, catching Draith in the leg. The commander stumbled, giving Mads the opportunity to break away and sprint toward the door where Azora waited. They made it through seconds before the emergency barrier slammed down, sealing off the corridor, and Commander Draith behind them. The maintenance bay was in chaos, with crew members attempting to launch emergency vehicles or secure critical equipment. The Phantom sat where they had left it, apparently untouched amid the confusion. "Get aboard," Mads directed, entering the activation code as they approached. The ship's systems came online instantly, the entry ramp extending to receive them. The freed prisoners boarded quickly, while Mads and Azora took their positions at the controls. "Phantom systems, nominal." Mads confirmed, initiating launch sequence. "Bay doors are on emergency protocol. They'll cycle open in 30 seconds. As the countdown progressed, a new threat appeared on their sensors, internal security forces converging on the maintenance bay, likely alerted to their presence by Draith. "We're going to have company," Azora warned, monitoring the approaching signals. The bay doors began their ponderous opening sequence, just as security forces burst in from multiple entrances. Energy weapons fire peppered the Phantom's hull, harmlessly dispersed by its shields. "Hold on," Mads warned, engaging thrusters before the bay doors had fully opened. The Phantom shot forward, barely clearing the narrowed gap in a shower of sparks, as its shields scraped against the partially opened doors. Beyond lay the chaos of full Space Battle Alliance vessels, engaged with the scattered Hegemon fleet fighter squadrons, dueling among the larger ships. Transmitting Alliance recognition codes. Azora announced, sending the predetermined signal that would identify them to Korik's forces. An incoming transmission cut through the communication static. "Phantom, this is Admiral Korik. Confirmation received. Proceed to coordinates being transmitted now. We're opening a corridor for your approach." Mads acknowledged and set course for the indicated position, weaving through the battle with practiced skill. Alliance fighters moved to provide escort, protecting the Phantom from Hegemon vessels that managed to coordinate attacks despite their compromised command systems. They approached the Alliance flagship Eclipse, a sleek, powerful vessel that had once been the pride of the Stellar Fleet. Its hangar bay doors stood open in welcome, protected by energy shields that admitted their ship while maintaining atmospheric integrity. As the Phantom settled onto the hangar deck, medical teams rushed forward to attend to the freed prisoners. Admiral Korik himself stood waiting, a tall, distinguished figure whose uniform bore the modified insignia of his independent command. Mads and Azora disembarked, still in their hegemon disguises, but recognized immediately by the Admiral. "Princess Azora," Korik greeted with formal respect. "Your operation was successful beyond expectations. The hegemon fleet is in disarray, and the Dominion itself appears to have lost primary propulsion." "The virus worked as intended," Azora confirmed. "What of Aquilon?" "The occupation forces are already withdrawing, lacking coordination from Central Command," Korik reported. "We've deployed liberation teams to secure key facilities. Your people are rising up everywhere, reclaiming their cities." Relief washed over Azora's features, momentarily breaking through her royal composure. "And Fleet Admiral Drace?" Still aboard the Dominion, which is now surrounded by our vessels," the Admiral replied. "We've demanded unconditional surrender. Given the ship's condition, I expect a response shortly." As if summoned by his words, a communication officer approached. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Dominion. Fleet Admiral Drace is requesting direct communication." Korik raised an eyebrow. "Put it through to the main briefing room. Princess Commander Rowan, I believe you've earned the right to be present for this." They followed Korik to the briefing room, where a holographic communication field shimmered to life. The imposing figure of Fleet Admiral Drace appeared, his normally immaculate uniform showing signs of the chaos aboard his vessel. "Admiral Korik," Drace acknowledged stiffly. "I wish to discuss terms." "The only terms available are unconditional surrender," Korik replied evenly. "Your command systems are compromised, your fleet scattered, and your flagship is dead in space." Drace's reptilian features remained impassive, but the subtle darkening of his scales betrayed his anger. His eyes narrowed as they fell on Azora, recognition evident, despite her disguise. "So the rumors were true," he hissed. "The princess lives, and has found unlikely allies." "The Hegemon Collective's expansion ends today," Azora stated firmly. "Aquilon is free and other worlds will follow." Drace seemed to consider his options, scales shifting through colors as he processed the situation. Finally, he straightened to his full height. "I will surrender the Dominion and my personal command," he declared formally. "But understand this, the Collective is larger than one fleet or one admiral. This setback is temporary." "Perhaps," Korik acknowledged, "but it provides time and opportunity for a new balance of power to emerge. Prepare your ship for boarding. Alliance security teams will transfer your crew to designated holding facilities." With a final glare of defiance, Drace terminated the communication. "He surrendered more easily than I expected," Mads commented suspiciously. "Because surrender preserves the hegemon hierarchy for eventual recovery," Korik explained. "Drace is thinking long-term. A ceasefire now allows them to regroup later, which is why our coalition must solidify quickly." "Coalition?" Azora questioned. Korik gestured to a strategic display, showing dozens of worlds across multiple sectors. "While you were infiltrating, the Dominion representatives from these systems agreed to form a mutual defense pact. With the hegemon in retreat, many more will join. What we need now is leadership that inspires confidence across species and political divisions." His gaze rested meaningfully on Azora. "You want me to lead this coalition," she realized. "You've become a symbol of successful resistance," Korik confirmed. "An Aquilonian royal who endured hegemon torture, escaped, and struck back decisively. Your story has spread across 100 worlds already." Azora looked to Mads, who had been quietly observing the exchange. "What do you think Commander Rowan you spoke of a coalition of equals when we discussed the future?" Mads stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. "I think symbols matter, especially in chaotic times. But symbols must be paired with substance. The coalition needs practical governance structures as much as inspirational leadership." "A partnership, then," Azora decided, looking between Mads and Korik. "Military experience, diplomatic connections, and the moral authority of resistance. Together, We might build something that avoids the Alliance's mistakes, while preserving its ideals. A worthy endeavor, Korik agreed, extending his hand in the universal gesture of alliance. And one that begins today. In the months that followed, the nascent coalition took shape around the core worlds, liberated from hegemon influence. Aquilon became a central meeting point, its underwater cities, hosting diplomatic exchanges where representatives from diverse species and political systems worked to forge a sustainable interstellar community. The Hegemon Collective, while not destroyed, was contained to its original territories, its expansionist agenda checked by the growing strength of the coalition. Drace and other captured leaders were held accountable through a newly established interstellar tribunal setting precedents for justice across species boundaries. Mads Rowan, once known only as Rogue, accepted a formal commission as commander of Coalition Special Operations, working closely with Princess Azora to identify and address emerging threats. Their professional partnership deepened into personal connection as they navigated the challenges of building peace from the ashes of conflict. 1 year after the Battle of Aquilon, as it came to be known, Mads and Azora stood together on a balcony, overlooking one of Aquilon's magnificent crystal cities. Bioluminescent coral illuminated the underwater metropolis, casting everything in a gentle blue glow that complemented Azora's natural azure skin. The Coalition Charter will be ratified tomorrow, she noted, studying a data pad containing the final amendments. 27 founding worlds with 15 more applying for membership. Even some former hegemon territories seeking protection. More than we dared hope for a year ago, Mads agreed, gazing out at the city. Though I suspect maintaining unity will prove more challenging than creating it. Azora set aside the data pad and turned to face him fully. Which is why I've been considering the importance of personal connections in diplomatic relations. Personal connections, he repeated, raising an eyebrow. Indeed, she replied with uncharacteristic hesitation. For instance, a formal union between Aquilonian royalty and a respected human commander might symbolize the coalition's cross-species cooperation rather effectively. Mats's expression shifted from confusion to dawning understanding. Princess Azora, are you proposing a diplomatic arrangement or something more personal? Both, she admitted, her violet eyes meeting his directly. The diplomat in me sees the strategic value. The woman who endured torture escaped with a reckless human's help and fought alongside him to free her people. She has different motivations entirely. Mads stepped closer, taking her hands in his. In that case, I accept both proposals, the diplomatic and the personal. Though I warn you, I remain somewhat reckless. I would expect nothing less, she replied with a smile that transformed her regal features. It's what I found most appealing about you from the start. Their union 6 months later became a celebration not just for Aquilon, but for coalition worlds across the sector. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to witness the ceremony performed according to both Aquilonian and human traditions. And when a year afterward, Azora gave birth to a daughter, with her mother's azure skin and her father's gray eyes, the child was hailed as a living symbol of the new era, not just the heir to Aquilon's throne, but a promise of unity that transcended ancient barriers between species. They named her Lyra after an old Earth constellation that ancient mariners once used for navigation, a fitting metaphor for a child who would help guide worlds through uncharted interstellar relations. She has your strength, Mads observed, as he watched Azora cradling their infant daughter in the royal nursery of Aquilon's primary city dome. And your determination, Azora countered with a smile. I saw her fighting against her swaddling blankets earlier. Definitely your daughter. Mads laughed, his once hardened features softened by fatherhood. Let's hope she inherits your diplomatic skills, rather than my tendency to shoot first and negotiate later. A balance of both would serve her well, Azora replied thoughtfully. The coalition remains fragile in many ways. By the time she reaches maturity, she'll face challenges we can scarcely imagine. But she won't face them alone, Mads promised, placing a gentle hand on his daughter's head. just as you didn't have to face the hegemon alone. Azora's violet eyes met his filled with emotion that transcended words. When you appeared in that detention cell, I thought you were a hallucination, a phantom sent by my failing mind. Instead, I was just a reckless human with a plan crazy enough to work, he reminded her, with the half-smile that had first caught her attention amid the chaos of escape. The universe works in mysterious ways, she observed. If the hegemon hadn't captured me, I would have found another way to meet you, Mads interrupted with certainty. Some connections are inevitable, Princess. I believe that now. Outside the royal residence beneath the massive ocean that covered most of Aquilon, the city pulsed with renewed life and purpose. Ships from a dozen coalition worlds docked at the recently expanded Interspecies Exchange Hub, bringing diplomats, scientists, and traders eager to participate in the new interstellar community. On the command deck of Coalition headquarters, established in a refurbished Stellar Alliance facility orbiting Aquilon, Admiral Korik reviewed defense protocols with representatives from newly joined worlds. The former hegemon dreadnought, Dominion now rechristened Unity, served as the flagship of the Coalition's United Fleet, a powerful symbol of transformation. Dr. Cyrus Valen, appointed Director of Coalition Intelligence, coordinated a vast network of information gathering that monitored the fragmented hegemon territories and other potential threats. His laboratories worked continuously to understand and counter technologies like the neural disruptors, ensuring such weapons could never again be used with impunity. And in the former neutral outpost of Vidian Administrator Thorne, had officially aligned her station with the Coalition, while maintaining its reputation as a free port where cultures could mingle without excessive restrictions. The Tyrusian information broker, Lannis, now served openly as a Coalition cultural liaison, those color-shifting eyes no longer forced to watch from shadows. Even Commander Draith, captured during the liberation of the Dominion, had eventually provided valuable intelligence in exchange for reduced sentencing. Unlike Fleet Admiral Drace, who maintained rigid hegemon ideology, even in defeat, Draith had recognized the changing reality of the sector and chosen adaptation over obsolescence. 5 years passed in relative peace as the Coalition solidified its foundations. Sporadic hegemon incursions tested boundary worlds, but were repelled by coordinated Coalition responses. Former enemies found common ground through trade, cultural exchange, and mutual defense, though not without occasional friction and misunderstanding. Lyra grew into a curious, energetic child who delighted in exploring every corner of Aquilon's underwater cities. Her unique heritage made her an object of fascination across Coalition worlds, but Azora and Mads worked diligently to ensure she experienced as normal a childhood as possible, despite her symbolic importance. On the 5th anniversary of the Battle of Aquilon, representatives from all Coalition worlds gathered for commemorative ceremonies and policy discussions. The central event was held in Aquilon's Grand Assembly, a massive amphitheater constructed within a natural underwater cavern and enhanced with bioluminescent coral that cast everything in ethereal blue-green light. Princess Azora, now officially High Counselor of the Coalition, stood before the assembled delegates with Mads at her side in his capacity as Commander of Special Operations. Their daughter Lyra, now 4 years old, sat with Dr. Valen in the front row, struggling to maintain the decorum expected of a royal child during such formal proceedings. 5 years ago, Azora began her voice, carrying clearly through the perfect acoustics of the cavern. Many of us were enemies or strangers at best. Divided by history, species, and ambition, we seemed destined to remain fragmented, while powers like the Hegemon Collective imposed their vision of order through force. She paused, surveying the diverse gathering reptilian hegemon representatives from reformed territories seated near tentacled Vesperians who had once been their prey. Corporate executives from manufacturing worlds engaged in earnest conversation with philosophers from contemplative societies. Former Alliance military officers sharing experiences with independent world defense forces. Today, she continued, we stand united, not by fear or compulsion, but by choice. Every world represented here has freely joined our coalition, accepting both its protections and its responsibilities. We have created something unprecedented, a community of worlds that preserve sovereignty while building shared prosperity. Mads stepped forward, adding his perspective, as was customary in their joint addresses. As someone who witnessed the fall of the Stellar Alliance and the rise of the Hegemon Collective, I can attest to the unique nature of what we've built together. The old alliance demanded conformity. The Hegemon imposed submission. Our coalition asks only for cooperation toward common goals, allowing each world to follow its own path within a framework of mutual respect. A murmur of approval rippled through the assembly. In the front row, Lyra beamed with pride at her parents, momentarily forgetting her impatience with the formal proceedings. Yet we must acknowledge that challenges remain. Azora continued her expression, growing more serious. Beyond our borders, remnants of the Hegemon hierarchy rebuild their forces. Pirate cartels exploit weaknesses in our patrol coverage. Resource disputes between member worlds still occasionally threaten regional stability. And most concerning, Mads added, our long-range scouts report unusual activity in the far-reach sector, structured energy signatures, unlike anything in our databases. We must remain vigilant, continuing to strengthen both our defenses and our unity. Azora raised her hands in a traditional Aquilonian gesture of community. Yet, these challenges need not discourage us. 5 years ago, many thought resistance against the Hegemon was futile. Many believed that diverse species could never truly cooperate beyond temporary alliances of convenience. We proved them wrong, Mads concluded with quiet confidence. And we will continue to do so, facing whatever comes next, with the same determination that brought us here today. The assembly erupted in approving sound applause from the humanoid species, resonant humming from crystalline entities, bioluminescent flares from energy-based beings. In that moment of unity, the promise of their coalition seemed not merely possible, but inevitable, a natural evolution toward cooperation rather than conflict. As the formal proceedings concluded, and delegates dispersed for more casual interaction, Lyra broke free from Dr. Valen's supervision and rushed to her parents' side-azure skin, gleaming in the bioluminescent light. "Was I good?" she asked eagerly, looking up at them with gray eyes that held both Mads's intensity and Azora's wisdom. "Perfect," Azora assured her, smoothing a hand over her daughter's hair. "Every princess at every gathering." "Not just a princess," Mads reminded them, both kneeling to meet his daughter at eye level. "A future leader of a coalition built on hope and freedom." Lyra considered this with the solemn thoughtfulness that occasionally emerged from beneath her childish energy. "Like how you rescued Mother from the bad people." "Something like that," Mads agreed with a smile. "Though I didn't do it alone. No one accomplishes anything truly important alone." "A lesson worth remembering," came Admiral Korik's voice as he approached resplendent in his coalition uniform. "High Counselor Commander, the delegation from the reformed Hegemon territories requests a private audience." Azora nodded instantly, shifting back to her diplomatic role. "Of course. Lyra, go with Dr. Valen to the reception. We'll join you shortly." As their daughter reluctantly departed with her elderly guardian Mads, and Azora exchanged a glance that contained volumes of shared understanding. From the nightmare of a Hegemon detention cell to leadership of an interstellar coalition, their journey had been improbable by any rational calculation. "Still glad you rescued me, Rogue?" Azora asked quietly, as they prepared to meet the Hegemon delegation. Mats's scarred face broke into the genuine smile he reserved for her alone. "Best reckless decision I ever made, Princess. Best decision I ever made." Together, they moved forward to address whatever challenges awaited their individual strengths, amplified by the bond they shared, a microcosm of the coalition itself, and a testament to the power of unexpected connections across the stars. In the vastness of space surrounding Aquilon coalition vessels, maintained their vigilant patrols. The dreadnought Unity, once the symbol of Hegemon oppression, as the Dominion, now led a fleet dedicated to preserving the freedom that had been so dearly won. And in the far-reach sector, something unknown continued to stir its nature and intentions, yet to be discovered, a reminder that in an infinite universe, the end of one struggle often heralded the beginning of another, and that true strength lay not in isolation, but in standing together against whatever might come. For now, though, Aquilon and its allies celebrated 5 years of hard-won peace, the freedom of worlds once threatened with subjugation, and the promise of a future where cooperation might finally triumph over conquest. It was an uneasy peace at times, fragile and requiring constant attention, but it was peace nonetheless. In the royal quarters that evening, as Lyra slept surrounded by the gentle blue glow of Aquilonian night lights, Mads and Azora stood at the viewport, overlooking their underwater kingdom, and the stars visible through the transparent ocean dome above. "Do you think it will last?" Azora asked, giving voice to the question that occasionally haunted her quieter moments. "The coalition," Mads considered thoughtfully. "Nothing lasts forever in its original form. But what we've built has strong foundations. It can evolve, adapt to new challenges, like life itself." "A philosophical answer from a former rogue pilot," she teased gently. "You've changed." "We all have," he acknowledged, drawing her closer. "That detention cell where I found you, I sometimes think about how differently things might have unfolded. If I'd arrived a day later, or if you hadn't endured." "But you did, and I did," she reminded him, resting her head against his shoulder. "And now we face whatever comes next together. Not just us, but all the worlds that have joined our cause." Beyond their viewport, the bioluminescent city pulsed with life and purpose. Ships from coalition worlds moved through designated corridors, bringing ideas and resources from across the sector. In orbit above, the combined fleet maintained its protective vigil, a visible reminder of the strength found in unity. And far beyond, in the depths of space, still unexplored, new challenges and opportunities awaited, a universe of possibilities for worlds that had chosen cooperation over conflict, hope over fear, and the difficult path of freedom over the false security of subjugation. Together, Mads agreed, his gaze moving from the underwater city to the stars beyond. "All of us, together,